Did you just put the ring on, or are you in the first few years of your marriage? Welcome to the First Year Marriage Show, a podcast dedicated to helping newlyweds navigate the first few years of marriage. My husband, Marcus, and I will be sharing marriage tips to help you build a strong foundation for your marriage. We believe having a strong foundation is essential to having a happy, healthy, and lasting marriage. We will also be learning from the experiences of awesome married couples who have been where you are today, taking from them lessons to help you build a strong foundation for the lasting marriage you desire. Take a deep breath, relax, learn, and enjoy the show.
Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the First Year Marriage Show. I'm really thankful that you decided to take some time out of your busy schedule and busy activities to listen to this week's episode. If you are new to this podcast is all about helping newlyweds and married couples improve their marriages so that they can have the lasting marriage that they want to have. I know for us, we don't want to have a marriage that is not fulfilling. We want to enjoy our marriage and want to enjoy our lives. Over the weekend, we celebrated our 4th year wedding anniversary, and it gave us the opportunity to reflect on some of the things some of the struggles that we've encountered over the past 4 years, and some of the things that we've done together as a married couple, and where we've been and where we are today, and how happy we are with our marriage, and the opportunity that we have to be able to impact other couples, especially newlyweds, during their first year of marriage with this podcast. So thank you guys again for listening to this podcast and tuning in this week. Also, over the weekend, we got interviewed by our good friend Nick Pavlidis for his podcast, which is A Terrible Husband. And to get access to that interview, just visit aterriblehusband.com/episode 2, and you should be able to get the links to that interview that we did with Nick. And if you want to listen to Nick Pavlidis' first year marriage story, just visit firstyearmarriage.com/2, and you should be able to get the links to that episode. All the links in today's episode is going to be found at firstyearmarriage.com/13, firstyearmarriage.com/13. Thank you and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the First Year Marriage Show. I am your host, Marcus Kusi, and in this week's episode, I'll be sharing the first year marriage story of Brandon and Ashley LaMar. Brandon and Ashley have been married for more than 3 years, and they live in Atlanta, Georgia. Brandon is a college student who majors in criminology, and Ashley is a blogger and a technical writer by profession. So Brandon and Ashley, thank you guys for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it. Can you guys tell us a little bit about yourself and how you met each other?
Sure.
Thanks for having us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we're excited about this today, Marcus. Brandon and we actually met in 2009 via the computer. We actually met online. At the time, I was living down in South Florida and was in the middle of getting out of a really bad situation, a bad relationship that I used to be in. And he was actually living up in Alabama. But we connected online in some different groups, had some shared interests, and just became, really close friends. And that sort of just blossomed into a relationship. We spent actually a whole year online in this long distance online relationship together.
Wow.
While we both had to just sort through some personal things we were going through. And then one weekend I told him, I'm buying a plane ticket and I'm coming up there. And so I did. And I spent a few days up there visiting with him, and I returned to Florida then, and 2 weeks later I moved. We ended up actually getting married about 8 months after that.
Wow, that's not short at all, because I and my wife, we got married after 5 months of knowing each other, so I definitely know what it is like to get married really early.
Yeah,
if you know, you know. We were in a committed relationship online. And I had never, I had been on the internet since there was internet, but I had never connected with anybody like that. So, for me, it was before we were married, I literally rolled around town, looking at things yes, I am in a relationship. We hadn't seen each other yet. We had connected so well online daily. We're talking on the phone, and she was my best friend. And then it got to the point where she would probably tell you that it had to go to that next level because we had to meet, because there was just no further direction to go, without we had been on talking so long. It was time. And it scared me because I was afraid, at first I used to see people back in the MySpace days that have these shirts that said you looked better on MySpace. So I would always worry I'd be like, oh no, she's going to see me and it's going to be like, oh, you're better on the internet. But it turned out it was even more beautiful. It was like instant, everything that we had been building up to for that whole year, that closeness. It was there even more so in person, and we knew. And then after a little more talking, I guess, a week or two, we decided to start kind of planning, like pretty much that we knew we were going to get married, you know. And it's been, honestly, some people could look at it. I even had family members going into it like, wow, this is a little rushed. This is a little different. This is a little strange.
Yeah.
Because they're not, you know, a lot of older family, they're not used to the internet age and everything and how things have changed. And I myself thought, yeah, I've never been in a, you know, year-long online relationship like this before. But everything has been, it turns out, like a complete success. I mean, it was, you know, great.
Yeah, that's good. So, Brandon, how did you know that Ashley was the one that you wanted to settle down with?
Obviously, there's two different perspectives on that, but once the initial was, I was going through some difficulties, you know, on my own, and I found that I was surrounded by, you know, at the time, I hate to say it, but, you know, you can find yourself easily surrounded by a lot of negative influences. And I don't mean like people who are trying to always get you in trouble, but just somebody who's not the best person to get advice from or anything. And her and I would speak often, you know, whether it was phone or like personal messages, and she was always there building me up. And I think I kind of was doing the same for her because I felt that need to want to make sure that she felt good every day. And then it just went on and went on. And I started realizing, obviously, we had already had so much in common. That's how we met up. A lot of the same sports, a lot of the same passions for, you know, outside interests, hobbies and stuff. But it was the way, like, speaking to her, you know, once I started actually speaking to her on the phone and matching that sweet quality she had with that voice, you know, it was like just something that a reaction went off. And I started, honestly, not to be, you know, to get too, you know, spiritual about it, but I knew in my heart that this was a gift, if that makes any sense.
That makes sense to me.
Good, because yeah, that's how I started. And honestly, since that feeling, I still to this day I believe that that's the truth. I mean, because it has been, every marriage has, you know, their disagreements and stuff. But honestly, I have never been in any, whether it's a friendship or any kind of relationship, where things are so easily worked out, discussed. I don't know if we're the perfect combination of, like, we like the same things and some things we don't like at all. So we have our own interests. So maybe it allows this perfect kind of a supernatural, heavenly thing, you know? I mean, I just know and knew. And she was there for me for a lot of struggles, which, you know, I'm sure we can get into later, but she was very helpful.
So, Ashley, how did you know that Brandon was the one that you wanted to settle down with? Because I know being online is different from meeting someone in person physically and getting to know them. So how did you actually know that Brandon was the one that you wanted to get married to?
You know, you're right when you said that being with somebody online is very different from being with them in person. But with he and I, it actually worked out a lot better. You know, I think when people are together in person, a lot of things come up that you don't have to deal with when you're online. You know, you have to worry about a physical attraction. You have to worry about, put a lot more stress on, am I pretty enough? Do I look okay? You're always worried about, like, you know, how you're dressed and how you're looking, and you're putting a lot more effort and emphasis on the wrong things. So he and I being online, it was always just conversation. And when it first started, there was never any intention at the very beginning that this was ever going to turn into a relationship. It was just a friendship. So if I was angry about something, I could be honest about it. And if I was, you know, upset, if I was happy, I could just share, you know, my real true feelings and my real true identity. I didn't feel like I needed to put on any kind of impression for him. So I felt like it was really genuine from day one.
Wow.
And I felt like he was like that with me as well. So I got to know him as a true person, you know, his heart, his mind, his soul, what really made him tick. And I really connected with him on that level. You know, as it grew, it just became stronger and stronger. So
and I was attracted to her from the very beginning. I'm not going to lie about that. So, well, there was some, like, let me be, you know, the nice guy, Brandon, but at the same time, it was very real.
Right. There wasn't that distraction by any kind of anything physical. It was just really about your heart and soul. And I connected with him from day one.
Yeah. Thank you guys for sharing this story. I know some of our listeners want to know this about the couples who come on the show, and I'm glad you guys are sharing how you guys got to know that you wanted to get married to each other. After you guys got to know each other online, you met in person, you got engaged, and then you decided to get married and you got married. Like, would you describe your first year of marriage in one or two words? Like, how will you describe it?
One or two words. I would say, you know what? That's actually a tough one. There's a lot of adjectives that come up because that first year, we really faced a lot of struggles. So I guess I would probably say triumphant.
Triumphant.
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Brandon?
I was going to say something similar to that. I had the word, you said one or two. I was going to say proven something, successful, worth it, proven success. People talk about building a history of success. I definitely felt like that our marriage has been built on a strong foundation and we have a history of success.
That's fantastic. So, actually, just mention about describing your first year as being triumphant. I know whenever someone mentions the word triumphant, it means they went through some struggles, they went through some adjustments, or they had to overcome some obstacles. What are some of the adjustments that you guys had to go through during that first year?
We actually had quite a bit hit us our first year. My mom, when I was living up in Alabama after I had moved, she kind of teased me relentlessly at times about there being locusts, referencing the plagues in Egypt. It felt like one thing after another was just always coming down and always challenging us. Without getting too much into it, because it's kind of Brandon's story, but he had an incident that had come up a few years before I was in the picture, and he had been jumped and assaulted by some people. And resulted in a pretty significant head injury, and he was on some pain medication after that.
Medically.
Yeah, I mean, he'd been prescribed, some painkillers and some medical stuff. And when the prescriptions had run out, he needed help trying to come off of those because they can be addictive. And a lot of the doctors sort of disconnect once the prescription period is over. So, we had to work through that and get him off of those prescriptions, which we did, and he overcame. After we got off of those, we found out that he actually had another medical situation going on. That's kind of a long story, but that was a real struggle and actually almost ended up taking his life.
Wow.
I had also just moved to a new state, so there was the struggle of trying to find new employment, which I found. I was only there about 5 months, and I ended up getting laid off.
That's not pretty at all.
No. And then we ended up moving again back to Florida at the end of that first year. So there was a lot that we had to deal with that kind of just kept coming one after another. But we made it through. We bound together and we took our vows seriously. And
I feel like there again, I brought up the whole like a gift kind of thing. I honestly felt like, I would say I was abusing, but I wasn't, I hate to use the term junkie. That sounds horrible, but I wasn't, it wasn't a situation. I was taking what was prescribed to me and no more, but nobody was helping me discontinue the use, So, it just got to the point where it was basically masking a physical ailment I had, which ended up being called acute or a chronic appendicitis, which instead of my appendix rupturing, it took like 5 years to rupture. So it was just poisoning me for 5 years. So going to understand or appreciate that, a new person comes into your life that, you guys are getting, your whole lives, you're going to get married and you have all these plans, and all of a sudden, boom, her, in her case, was facing that I might and almost did die any day. That first year was very scary for me personally because, I didn't know, doctors didn't even know what was going on. And she had to kind of stand there and just, hold my hand and keep things, like for me, calm. And she did, and honestly, I'll tell anybody to this day, she's blessings of God and everything. And her coming into my life, she saved my life, literally, I would say, twice, by helping me, holding my hand and going through, because it's not easy to get somebody to come off of a physically dependent drug like that, that doctors have put you on. That's not easy to sit and watch somebody do. And then to help me go to doctor after doctor to finally figure out like what was wrong with me, and then to say, hey, you've got about 48 hours.
So Brandon, whilst you were having these medical issues and Ashley was supporting you with everything that you were going through, how did that play a big role in the adjustments that you guys had to make? Because I know when you're on medications, you have to buy drugs from the drugstore or from the pharmacy. You have to probably go for some therapies. And as a newlywed, it's difficult because now that you're married, you're trying to adjust to living together as a married couple and being able to mesh either your finances or different upbringing. So how did that medical issue that you had tie into the adjustments that you guys had to make during that first year?
We had so many adjustments to make that first year. Like I said, with me moving to a new city and a new state and starting a new job and having this new family, and then the medical situation kind of being on top of that. I don't know that the medical situation itself brought up, any new significant adjustments, because all of it was such a big adjustment. What it did more than anything was just have to have us, anything that we did as far as going out, going to parties, going to events, going to dinners, we had to make sure that we were able to accommodate how he was feeling and, how it affected what medications he was on. He actually had trouble eating during that time when he was so sick, when he was at the height of it. So we had to eat, very lightly, very specific restaurants. But because that started at the very beginning of our marriage, it wasn't like we had already developed a pattern together and then had to change it. It just sort of became the new normal.
It started, at around the same time as, like I said, that we got together. And you could look at that two ways. It was almost like, in some ways you could say it was a, kind of a test, and others it was like I look at it as a blessing, because I don't think I know that I couldn't have made it through that stuff, any of that without her at my side. I mean, there's from helping me, deal with the medication all the way to the serious illness. My mind, she helped keep that, in my heart and everything together, because when you're facing a situation like an undiagnosed sickness that it's literally, could be killing you for 5 years, it'll start making you feel like you're going a little crazy, because a lot of doctors, people, family, we can't find it. It might be all in your head kind of thing. And it turns out it's not. She was there to kind of constantly believe in me. So like she said, there was not the adjustment. It was everything happened first, and the adjustment came afterwards when I was feeling better. And it's like we took a sigh of relief, and we're able now we can start really enjoying our love, together,
yeah.
Instead of just focusing on saving my life, and
that's actually a good point he just made. The biggest adjustment to us actually came after his surgery, when we had to start figuring out how we get back to a real normal after we had to go through such a big trial. Unusual, but actually the biggest adjustment came later.
And do you want to shed light on that?
Well, yeah, because after he had his surgery, let's go back to pre-surgery, there was a lot he couldn't do. He had a hard time really eating very much food. He had a hard time being out and about, walking around for too long. He had a hard time wanting to be around a lot of people because just physically he looked very ill. So he was really self-conscious of all of that. So we stayed in a lot. We tried to accommodate that, him being sick. So after his surgery and after he healed, all of a sudden, he felt like he wanted to kind of make up for that time that he'd been sick, all those things that he'd missed out on. So all of a sudden, it was about going out to dinner and going out to movies and going out to parties and making new friends and kind of being involved in life again, being part of the world again. So we had this schedule where we stayed in and we were kind of homebodies. And then all of a sudden that was adjusting to we're going out a lot. And that's where the conversations then about how often do we go out? What's our budget for entertainment like? Finding new friends that we were both compatible with. All of that started to come into play where it hadn't been a factor before.
I really appreciate your story. It's very different. I know there are couples who are probably experiencing the same thing, whereby one spouse is going through a medical issue right now, and because of that, they have to put everything on the hold. If they have to, whether they have to go out to eat together, whether they have to socialize a lot, go to family events, they just have to put everything on hold just to be able to go through the issue that they are experiencing right now. Because having a medical issue that could result in death is not something small at all. It's a really big issue that anybody who is faced with or encounters will panic within a moment, because we all don't want to die, even though we're going to die someday. But getting to know when you're actually going to die, it's something that is very, very scary.
Yes, sir.
So I know you guys just shared a struggle that you guys had, and the adjustments that you had to go through from being home most of the time to now going outside, being social and being friendly with other people and meeting people that you both like and enjoy to spend your time together with. Was there any funny or exciting moments that happened during the first year after you guys were able to go through all the medical issues that you encountered and adjustments that you had during your first year?
There's been exciting and funny times, even, it's, believe it or not, even through the good year, the rebound year, I guess, whatever you want to call it, for me getting healthy. But even in the year I was sick, I mean, that's what, honestly, I feel like, you look at some of the mortality rates of what I had, and I think I doubled it, and sometimes I think that, honestly, it's because her being in my life, because there were, even though, you can be sick and everything, you can still laugh and everything. And her and I, that first year, even when I was sick, there was a lot of laughter. We were always, and we still have this really, only her and I would get it, kind of sense of humor, which is, I think, great in a relationship, because, you laugh at each other's jokes, and it was that way in the beginning, there was just several times where even, if we would go, we went to a boat parade for Christmas one year. I had not been accustomed to doing those kind of things, but I said, sure, because I wanted, obviously, to make her happy. She had moved, and anything she wanted to do, she's a real history person, so she wanted to explore the town and stuff. So we went to this Christmas boat parade, and we got there, and it's, it felt like it was 25 degrees or something. And I'm even though I'm from Atlanta originally, I'm kind of a Florida guy, so I was not having that at all. I was like, okay. And we got there, and it turned out that not a single boat showed up for this parade.
Wow.
So it was her and I out there, and I guess other people kind of got the memo too, because very few people showed up at all. And then, like I said, no boats. So we just it was funny. We have pictures now of her and I being out there, and some of the best pictures we've ever taken. I was sick during that year, but I mean, I could still, turn on a good picture, but we both kind of laughed at that. It's like, we went to this boat parade that didn't exist.
Yeah. And, we did a lot of movies, during that first year, because we weren't able to go out a whole lot. So we've watched so many, old B movies, and I was never really a horror movie person, but that's a big genre that he likes. So we ran through, a lot of horror movie marathons, and just a lot of really bad old scary movies. So, but we've come up with our favorite quotable lines and our favorite inside jokes and stuff about those. It's really, like I said, it connected us in a way that I don't think a lot of people are able to really get to, because we just had to make the best of the situation we were in. And we tease sometimes now. We even laugh and joke about this one morning when we were living up in Alabama. Neither one of us are early morning people, and we were kind of delirious with sleep, and somebody from maintenance had knocked on our door to make a repair. And we got up, we jumped up kind of startled, we collided into each other. It was just this whole big disorganized 5-minute mess. So we still we tease and joke about that, and we always kind of look at each other we did this whole which way do we go?
That is really funny.
Yeah, so we just developed a lot of inside jokes is really what it was.
Yeah, I can see that. So during that first year, whilst you guys were going through all the medical issues that Brandon was having, was there any resource program or someone who helped you guys to be able to go through that period of time in your marriage, and how did that period really make a difference in your marriage?
There really wasn't. There really wasn't anybody that I felt was there for us, that was on our side. I didn't feel like I had really any resources to go to. There was nobody I could call. There was nowhere I could go. Even online, there just wasn't. We would go to one doctor, and they would tell us that he just had IBS, and we just needed to watch his diet. So I would go out and I would buy these IBS cookbooks, and I would try all these different recipes, and I would try all these different foods, and they didn't work. So we would go to another doctor, and he would say, no, I think that he just has a intolerance to gluten. So we would go all gluten free, and then that wouldn't help. It was every doctor we went to came back with a different diagnosis, which then meant different adjustments, which meant different websites and different support groups. But none of them were what he was actually dealing with. So nobody was ever there during the long term to really help us through. It just basically became me making phone call after phone call, and he and I chasing doctor after doctor until we finally got to Florida and found a doctor who was able to determine what was really wrong and fix him. It really was just the two of us just struggling our way through it.
Okay, so Ashley, I know you did most of you gave Brandon most of the support that he needed. Like, was there something that you had to rely on personally, since Brandon was really weak and couldn't really do much to help you with everything that you were going through?
It really was during that time. I felt like nobody but me and God. I mean, that was it. That was really the only place I felt like I had to turn, the only person I felt like I had to talk to. So I just spent a lot of time in prayer and a lot of time just reading my Bible and a lot of time just trusting that he was going to see us through it.
I can understand where you guys are coming from and you relying on God to help you through the experience that you're going through and being able to support your husband, Brandon, whilst he was having all these medical issues. It's definitely something that I know sometimes it's difficult for some people to understand how certain things work, but knowing that you believed in your faith and you believed in God and you trusted that he was going to see you guys through what you're going through is something that I appreciate you sharing insight on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a big. I mean, she said it best. It was us, and not that we didn't have like any. I wouldn't say we didn't have any family support. I would say, but where it counted and getting seeing things clearly, it came down to it was her and I did feel like God. The only question I kept having along the way, which I'm sure a lot of people do when they're going through struggles if they have faith, was I had found all of a sudden for the first time in my life this you find the person that you've spent your life trying to meet, and here all of a sudden I was fighting for my life, and I was a little, and I won't say angry, but I was a little angry with God at first because I was like, why am I going through this now after you just delivered this beautiful, amazing woman into my life? And like you said a minute ago, we don't kind of know why things happen. You can't always understand them. And that's just the way I look at it now. I think that it honestly, we already knew from the time we'd spent talking day after day that we had developed something. And maybe, it did build this heavy foundation, because to this day, I've never experienced, like I said, anything. Whether it's family or friends or anything, I've never been as close to anybody as I am with her. She's truly, in my mind, a blessing from God. That's how I try to roll every day, think that way.
Yeah, that's very, very good. Actually, I wanted to ask you this question. You made mention about IBS. I personally don't know what it is about. Can you share light into it? There might be other people who are listening right now also don't know what it is. So can you briefly explain it to us?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry about that. IBS is actually short for what the medical community calls irritable bowel syndrome.
Okay.
And it just means that you have sensitivities to certain foods. And
okay.
that, certain things, if you eat them, your body can't digest and stuff, and it starts to give you problems. So that's what they assumed that he had, but it was a false diagnosis. He never actually had that. But that's what they had us chasing for a while.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much for explaining it to us. Now I know what it means, and when someone mentions it to me down the road, I'll be able to be like, oh, this is what it means, and I'll be able to have a good conversation with them. Brandon, did you want to say anything?
IBS is often, like by a lot of doctors, viewed as, yes, it's irritable bowel, and some doctors look at it as it's the doctor just basically doesn't know what your specific symptom is, and that's why it turned out to be chronic appendicitis. Instead of, so for anybody that does struggle with stuff like that, I would recommend make sure, even at their insistence, make sure that they have their appendix looked at, because it may not be blown up, but it may be swollen and leaking or something. They could think they have IBS for 5 years, and it's pretty miserable.
I know it's definitely not something that anybody will want to experience down the road.
No.
Yeah. So Ashley and Brandon, thank you guys for sharing your experience. Before we end today's episode, one of the questions that I always ask all our guests is that what is the one lesson or advice that you guys wish you knew before you got married or during the first year that you guys were married?
I'll let you go first on that one.
Thanks. For us, And most of the advice that we got from people was about like, don't go to bed angry, always talk through your problems, understand that there's going to be an adjustment, don't fight over money. I mean, you get kind of all the same traditional basic advice, but it would always run through my head whenever I would go to bed at night. People would advise me like, don't go to bed angry. And instead I'm in a situation where I'm going to bed just praying that he's still alive when I wake up in the morning. Getting angry at him just never even crossed my mind during that year. I guess what it really comes down to is like, when we stood there and we took our vows, I really wish that somebody would have sat down with us and really went through them like word by word before you recite them. Because there's that part in there that says in sickness and in health. And in these days, that can mean so much with cancers and with all these different diseases out there. You might be a week into your marriage and be facing something like that. And, you've made that commitment. You can't give up. And I just wish that there had been somebody who would have really went through that and prepared us for the best and the worst of each of those situations.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're sharing this insight, because I know our listeners are listening right now, and some of them didn't get this advice that you're giving right now. And because you have given them and you've shared them today, they'll be able to apply it in their marriage and know what to expect when something like that happens down the road.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anything that, Brandon, you want to add?
I think that she said it best, because somebody could sit you down and tell you it's one of those things, you have to just kind of, hope that no one else would go through, because it's definitely not the way anybody would want to start a job, a relationship, anything, was all of a sudden finding out you're sick. But like I said, I want to make sure that I focus on that, our marriage together has been such a blessing in my life that even during that extreme sickness, some of it which was just, like I said, undescribable, and, there was still so much joy because she came into my life. So, I mean, I guess going in, I would have been a little more, I always, I used to be a DJ. I used to be kind of more of a guy. I lived from the city, was always out. So the sickness, all of a sudden not being able to do that was real weird for me. I was also not used to having real close relationships, because I always kind of played, I wanted to be a center of attention, but I didn't want to have too much attention on me, I guess you could say. So I wish I had known a little better about how to protect something that means so much to you. So in that first year when I was panicking, like, oh no, I think I'm dying, that I knew, to trust more and everything, but that's hard to do when you're not seeing things clearly. I do know that, like I said, the one thing I could say is that I was right about how I felt about her and when she came up. And so I think advice is, if you feel it, and it feels genuine, and it's not, I don't want to say ungodly, but I guess that's a word you could say, if you're living for the Lord and, and you feel what you feel, I mean, I say go for it. Some people may say, well, the relationships don't work if you meet on the internet. Well, in the 21st century, you can't say that, and this has been just a total blessing. And I would just say, make sure you keep your eyes open. If you're looking and you want to meet somebody, be open to a long distance relationship, because beautiful things can come out of it. I mean, it can happen.
God works in mysterious ways.
That's true.
Yeah. So how best can our listeners connect with you guys? Can you share any exciting projects that you guys are working on that you want our listeners to know about?
Well, I do have a blog. You can find it at foreverashley.com. And I'm on there pretty regularly. I post almost every day. I do talk about marriage and relationships and my faith on there. And I'm really active. And then I've got a Facebook page under the same name with a really, really great community of women. There's some men on there, but it's mostly the women that are interactive. And they do talk about their marriages and their relationships and their families and different prayer requests. So those are probably the best two places to get in contact with me.
Okay. What about you, Brandon?
I'm a big computer guy myself. Not quite as directly focused as she is with specific networks, but for the most part, I do have my own blog. I'm not quite as up to date on it all the time, but it's BrandonBreaks.com. It's BrandonBreaks.com. Some people always confuse, is it car brakes or is it like something breaking? But it's BrandonBreaks.com. Yeah, and then I guess Twitter would be @BrandonBreaks. You know, you can reach me.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing these resources and the ways that our listeners can connect with you guys. I'll be linking everything in the show notes, so anybody who is interested or who forgets or who is driving right now and cannot get access to a computer to look up your websites, all they have to do is go to the show notes for this episode, and they should be able to get access to you guys and be able to contact you guys.
Cool.
Brandon and Ashley, thank you guys once again for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you guys sharing your insights and the difficult times that you had, the exciting times that you had, and how you guys were able to navigate your first year of marriage and be able to use the difficult experiences that you guys experienced, especially with the medical issue, to be able to build a really strong foundation for a marriage. I know anybody who's listening to us today will be able to learn from you guys and be able to apply one or two things that they learned from your first year story in their marriage to be able to have the kind of marriage that they dreamed about before they said "I do" during their wedding day.
Well, that was well said. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Thank you guys a lot.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the First Year Marriage Show. To submit a question, feedback, or suggestions for the podcast, visit firstyearmarriage.com/feedback. Apply what you've learned today and build a strong foundation for the happy, healthy, and lasting marriage you desire. Enjoy your marriage. Enjoy your life.